For example, what you briefly said was one thing that is probably one of the biggest challenges in the whole cloud industry is the massive centralization and dependencies that we have from those couple of competitors, right? AWS, Azure, and
Google,
others,
Alibaba.
right? Google
Yeah.
Cloud, right? And Alibaba, right? Those four. So can you maybe in a bit less technical terms, can you explain a little bit how the current cloud industry looks like, and also explain some terms, right? Like what does cloud computing actually mean in very simple terms? Because I guess most of our audience, they're not at all technical, right? They're probably more like crypto enthusiasts, right? They just entered the industry maybe recently. So this is probably a lot to wrap our heads around, also for me, to be honest, because I don't have a technical background, right? So can you explain in a bit simpler terms the current landscape of the cloud industry and what the main challenges with focus on the centralization and dependencies that we have from those four players?
Right. So I'll try to be brief and give you a little background as to how we ended up with the clusterfuck that is right now, right? So internet, when we began, internet was designed to be a decentralized system. The goal of the internet was, well, if you have critical infrastructure that was, it began with military, right? Obviously with DARPA doing research. The goal was like, well, so we have this critical infrastructure that's controlling our defenses, and you have Cold War and Russia is like being aggressor and whatnot. We wanted to create an infrastructure where there's no central point of failure, right? So the internet was supposed to be a peer-to-peer, and then what happened is, well, it was evolving as a peer-to-peer network, but then we ended up creating these choke points in the middle, right? No longer, it was just your home computer could serve a request because internet got so popular. Now we wanted like this big data centers. Data centers are essentially machines that are housing other machines in a fully dedicated, with cooling, with network, with security, and all the things you would need. Basically, it's a beefed up home laptop, right? That's what a data center is. It's just what it is. So it's so much more secure because, well, if you have a laptop at home with critical data, it could be, compromised, right? And you can have thieves come and steal your data. So you probably want to give security. And if your data is being accessed a lot, you probably need a good network layer, right? So all these data centers are just nothing but fancy computers. That's what they are. Now, world over, well, companies were getting larger and the internet was getting more popular. People realized this isn't like in the 1990s, right? Amazon, companies like this that are building online businesses to have their own data centers, right? So they started building a lot of data centers. But the problem with data centers is, the problem with internet in general is you have peak capacity, peak loads. You don't normally have consistent loads, right? So like, Amazon, for example, Amazon.com, not Amazon Web Services.com, would have peak load during Christmas times, during Thanksgiving time, during holiday times where they have to shop, Father's Day, Mother's Day, that sort of thing. So if you have 100 computers, you have to, have enough computers to address the peak load, but most of the time you're like operating like 5%, 10%, because the load is very variable. So then Amazon really came up with the idea, well, look, we built all this infrastructure that we're not using a lot of time because, they had a lot of unused capacity. They're like, well, and we figured out how to scale our systems. There's a fascinating story about how Jeff Bezos was like, how engineering at Amazon was focusing so much energy on like keeping their system scalable and running instead of actually focusing on core product. They're like, well, how about we start selling some of this compute to other people? So that's how Amazon came about, Amazon Web Services. And it became obvious and became like a sales value proposition for like, well, you don't have to own your computers. We'll own them for you. We will sort of like, charge you per hour when you use it on demand, right? It made sense because now you don't need like your capital expense. Now you just need to pay by the hour. It made sense in the short run, but eventually it ended up becoming a huge, completely different animal, which is a lot more expensive. I'll get to that in a second. So it's a good business model, but in that value proposition, Amazon was the first one. I mean, not the first one, but definitely the most popular one. Google actually was first before Amazon. They realized this, but Google didn't build a product that was appealing enough for customers to jump ship like Amazon did. And so other companies caught on, and that became like a thing. And you know, Amazon's business model is no longer just selling compute. They add, so when you're running an infrastructure, you know, selling compute is one thing. You need these additional services that you use, like databases, like caching servers, like, you know, all these infrastructure elements, right, that you normally need to serve your application. Now, these databases, for example, like a Postgres database, there are only like few things you need to do to maintain a Postgres database. Like, you don't want to do it yourself. You want to pay someone else to do it because it's a common thing that doesn't need specialization, and it's maybe expensive for someone in your team to be fully dedicated managing a Postgres. So Amazon came along, said, "Oh, we'll manage your Postgres or your MySQL at a cost premium." They call it managed services. So Amazon will offer you cheap compute with an intention to sell your managed compute, managed services, and most of the revenue comes from managed services. So build this like competitive moat where they hold you on. You can't really change because now Amazon is managing your services, right? So one thing led to another. It's very similar to burgers and fries. You come for the burger, burgers are cheap, but you stay for, I mean, then money's in the fries, right? It's same thing like razors and like the blades, right? Well, razors are cheap, but blades are expensive. Same model, replicated. So the problem is like, so now you all use these services, then you're locked in because now they have your data, right? So it's just one thing after another. Amazon has about 250 services. That's their biggest revenue. I think they lose money on like compute, if I'm not wrong, right? And that's fine because they make so much money on the other thing, right? Like, so to answer your question, like cloud became just a simple computer, essentially hosting data to data centers, and data centers became costly to run because they don't have utilization. And that led to cloud becoming the most powerful, like most profitable unit. I mean, Amazon Web Services alone is valued at $500 billion by Amazon. It is the most profitable unit for Amazon, right? So it's money making machine, right? And of course, the incentives are driven by money and nothing else, right? Like it's very, very straightforward there. So now, so where Akash is coming and be like taking a unique angle Amazon can't play is, number one, we are fully open source, right? I mean, that creates structural problems. Like you have censorship, you have like Amazon can shut anybody down if they want to, and they exercise that censorship recently with shutting down a lot of services they have misaligned political values from, you know. So and there's and the cost. I mean, if you talk to anybody using Amazon, they'll tell you how expensive. They don't even know what they're paying for. It's opaque billing. They create all these things on top of the core value proposition. So where we are coming from is like, well, we're going to data centers. We know there's a lot of unused capacity in data centers, right? Even Amazon's business model was that when they began. So we know there's a lot of unused capacity, and if we figure out a way to monetize unused capacity, now you eliminate the need for cloud itself or cloud service providers. I mean, not the cloud, right? So we're attacking the problem at a core. The core of the problem, which created Amazon Web Services, was unused capacity. Now, if we solve that problem, we don't need Amazon Web Services. Like, it's not going to be a single day or a single year journey. We have a long way to catch up. But hey, we started. We have growth. We have people using it, and that growth is amazing. We just saw we doubled the number of total workloads deployed on Akash in a month, right? And we are month 4. We still have 100% growth month over month at month 5, which is very fascinating. You normally see like 22% growth on like month 2, right? And that's considered great, right? But we have 100% growth. So it's very clear that the world is ready for a decentralized solution of Amazon. I mean, of course, Akash doesn't do everything Amazon does. It doesn't have 250 services that are managed, but we have one thing that's really well, which is compute. And after the compute, we're working on building higher level services in a decentralized way where you don't have centralized point of control or failure.